Hello guys, welcome back to Not Just Mecha. It's Marco here, and today we finally jump into Warhammer the Old World with a brand new series, unironically painting the model that literally killed the setting. This is my Archaon. Age of Sigmar Archaon is an incredible, mind-blowing model, but I don't have any emotional connection with it. This one will always be the one that I really wanted as a kid, but couldn't afford. I know, the Old World takes place way before the advent of Archaon as the Ever-Chosen, and future episodes will be more focused on playable minis of the updated range. But this kind of unfulfilled wishes leave a mark. And starting the re-exploration of a setting that defined me with this model, and now that I am a professional miniature painter, really means something. Metal miniatures are again a thing. So I'm pretty sure we are going to talk extensively about the many figure-specific intricacies of working with metal cast with old-school mold-making techniques. But there are a few basic tips that can cover any situation. Arm yourself with different sizes of clippers, because chunky residues and undercuts can easily dent or even break the smaller precision wire cutters. And the same goes for any other kind of blade. Not having the heavy-duty option is not an option here. Drill and pin. Drill and pin. Drill and pin. If a piece is heavy or hanging from a single point of contact, drill it and add a pin. Because super glue is not reliable as you think, especially in the long run or under the stress of the gaming table. And cyanoacrylate activator is an absolute must. Your new amazing modeling life will begin only when an activator accelerator will land in your toolbox. Equally mandatory tool is a 2-components epoxy putty. Old models and metal figures in particular systematically have huge gaps to fill, and any sort of superficial imperfections, and the putty phase is never totally skippable. The big advantage of something like Milliput over the more popular green stuff is that it's water-soluble, so you can endlessly adjust its consistency to the point of turning it into a fluid, brushable paste that can easily fill any size of gaps, blend edges and sculpted additions with a super organic look, and also smooth out superficial rough surfaces that on this model are so many that a few parts are basically primed in Milliput. Oh, and you can also sand it when it's dry, for the ultimate absolute smoothness. Pro tip: isopropyl alcohol works even better than water for dilution, because its evaporation from the mix is way faster. And in general, the paste you obtain with it is smoother and more creamy. Yeah, preparation here is not trivial, and for sure not modern beginner friendly. But these are foundational modeling skills, essential also for resin models, and one-to-one transferable on any kind of display figure. Plus, with a bit of contamination, even your modern kits will look way better. Every day I see minis full of cringy gaps and mold lines. So, even if you are like me and dying to jump into painting, please put some quality work on this stage. A coat of primer makes the visual mess go away, and any remaining witness mark disappears. Yep, second sub-assembly in a row. What is happening here? I promise, in this series I'm going to explore any possible technical and stylistic way of painting. From cheesy Goblin Green base rims kind of old school, to super gritty grimdark. By the way, let me know in the comments what and how you want to see it painted. But because of the wish fulfillment nature of this project, here I'll do my thing. Still paying respect to the old times, with the primary use of a pretty straightforward layering flow. The cold blue base represents the general environmental vibe before the introduction of the OSL effects, and their diffusion from the base and the blade. And the local warm bits of equipment come all out of it with a gentle turn into violet. There are many ways to jump into the red territories of the color wheel, but here I'm opting for a reddish-brown with the specific intent of lowering the saturation of the lower midtones / first shadows. This is also a way to optimize this quick and dirty color blocking process, using a handy common ground for non-metallic gold and reds that I can easily adjust later with opaque and transparent overlays, thanks to the transitional nature of brown, always open to accept and potentially transition into basically any color. And this yellow ochre is its natural lighter, warmer and more yellowish evolution. I do a quick detour on the green-grey midtones / local use of Torgar to adjust and clean the previous oversprays. And at this stage, I quickly apply it with a simple inside to outside volumetric attitude to keep the more complex and directional interactions with the environmental light sources, mostly for the fun brushwork. This powerful red goes only on the cape and the flaming sword. Here I'm being a bit more precise and careful, but only on a super macro level, basically going with a more solid and vibrant coat on the internal side of the cape that will be exposed to the orange glow of the sword. So this red will be basically the shadow of this part. And of course, on the sword itself, that is the actual source. Gold and Bones now start their sudden, quick climb to the high values of the reflections. But you know what? I want the gold, especially the one of the helmet, to be a bit more vibrant and eye-catching. So I bring back that extra saturation immediately, with a single layer of contrast, straight from the bottle. Parts that have their local colors in this chromatic territory get a more solid coat. But the use of this light, warm skin tone is not limited only to these more obvious bits. This stage represents the base of my diffused and discreet, but all-wrapping environmental light, in contrast with the darker blue sensations of the shadows, and coming from the dispersion of the warm glow of the lava base and the flaming sword. Yes, even on the black armor. And this idea is applied of course also on the base, that turns into a more greenish turquoise, but in this case using a more solid type of paint, only because I'm touching the base all the time, and I need a tougher coat. This chunk of metal weighs 300 grams, and I'm honestly too scared to put it on a handle. My left forearm is already in pain. and white takes care of the extreme values. This is the stage in which I'm being the most directional and mindful of the vectors of my lights, because I'm literally rendering their more contained highest points, but still being very sketchy, quick and diffused. Because the beauty of this approach is precisely the fact that no particular precision is needed at this point. So here is my colorful, heavily unbalanced towards the light value sketch. It looks richer and more complex than a black and white value sketch, or a quick zenithal. That's its simplified, perpendicularly lit version, but it's conceptually the same thing, with of course that extra tactical richness. The main reason to operate in this way in this case is that I want all that foundational information about light and volumes that will make the brushwork a super pleasant and relaxed affair. But I'm aiming also for a vibrant and saturated result, heavily based on the impact of the internal OSLs. So a luminous base with no black involved, and with a bunch of chromatic movement, is the perfect base to quickly and super effectively introduce that punch of saturation of the projected lights, using the most saturated and versatile paints on the planet, aka inks. In this stage, I use just a few obvious colors that are already part of the chromatic climb, because they are operating in transparency over a modulation that is already there. So technically, you can consider them more like a staining, saturating filter. As you can see, despite playing for sure a bit with the opacity and value of their final layer, modulated through the overlapping of their natural transparency, their actual value is not really important. Because, again, that map is totally set. It just needs to be followed and enriched. But black is a slightly different story. The real star of this stage. And I'm pretty sure the part that is puzzling the newcomers the most. So, it's color theory time! Black is an achromatic color, like white and grey, that, without going too deep and technical, when used as it is, it's flat, boring and ugly. Plus, in the real world, because of its being achromatic, it is extremely influenced by environmental inputs, and bouncing lights and reflections from objects all around. So, the easiest way to render all that richness and complexity is using a chromatic black. Low-value complementary tones are great for this job, because in suddenly crossing the color wheel, they neutralize each other into something that, in full opacity and or saturation, looks like black, but in reality hides a strong, colorful nature. And this is not even the best part. Other than being simply way more interesting to look at, this black is still made by two contrasting components, both in temperature and tone. So when you unbalance the recipe, or maybe you add OSLs on top, just saying, it naturally and beautifully flows into colored lights and deep, lively shadows, without the nasty, dead desaturation coming from natural black. and I close the transparent layering, reinstating the highest and lightest points with white. You can obtain the same effect by diluting Liquitex Titanium White ink, but this lovely Schmincke transparent white makes the application super forgiving straight from the bottle, so I'm happy to take the shortcut. And I move directly to the wet palette. Note on the medium. Other than being used for the usual medium functions, this specific highly matte medium from Golden makes me reach a more controlled and consistent uniformity of the final finish. I use a bunch of different paints in different stages of the work, and with this common ingredient in my mixes, everything comes together without having to later use a flattening, shades messing, depth killing, color dulling general layer of varnish. Yeah, I really hate varnish. This way I can keep my lovely deep satin shadows and have them flow into more solid and controlled illustrational matte lights. In a purer gaming context, if you really feel the need of a layer of varnish to physically protect the shell of paint and avoid its potential flaking from the metal surface, use a solvent-based spray can in an early stage of the work to create a seriously solid but invisible Under Armour. I put a mark on the video, so you can go back and have a reference of that magical and visually low impact point of the workflow. Okay, back to what is happening. I'm not willing to lose my time in the boring color blocking and basing stages, but I really want to enjoy the flow of the later process and indulge in my beloved scribbling and doodling phase. So I don't intercut the work with any of my usual time-saving tricks. The keyword here is layering. The blocky, more classic style of layering is traditionally used to render the whole, from dark to light, value and chromatic climb of a piece, working around the quote-unquote problem of the intrinsic opacity of acrylic paint with the use of small, overlapped increments of light. But here that work is 90% done, and I can just focus on the fun, meditative part of detailing the structure, instead of having to slowly build it from its foundations. But the process remains the same, with the same thick and opaque type of application that delivers that specific, charming, clearly hand-painted look. Plus, in my head, this model is first of all an illustration. Actually, many illustrations, fused in an aspirational look that relies on heavy, hyper-render textures and visible brushstrokes. So I'm kind of in the middle of the perfect storm of references, expectations, and intentions. So the paint and its properties and the logic of the technique may be the same, but the brushstrokes are extremely different. I'm not looking for coverage, actually quite the opposite. So all the touches are almost microscopic to create the illusion of smoothness with an optical type of blending. And every brushstroke is part of some kind of texture. I don't think the camera translates it well, especially with this kind of zooming into the work. But despite being one of the dimensionally biggest heroes of its time, this model is quite small for modern standards. And in this kind of scale, these textural techniques develop and deliver an effect pretty quickly. Rough fabric is made by parallel, thin, and long lines, while fur is made by shorter and less organized strokes. Metals are a mass of micro scratches, made by short, nervous, high density and quite random marks. Because this guy sees battle every minute of every day. And strong, pure, reflected light is made by abstract brushstrokes. And here is the final result. During the whole work, I kept thinking that if I were a ghost, this would have been my unfinished business. Now I can move on. You probably noticed that I'm super excited for the old world. But still, I'll be completely, totally honest. I'm extremely skeptical about its, let's face it, dated, slow, and a bit clunky game design, reproposed in this age of quick, efficient, and streamlined rule sets. Plus, I was really hoping for a diorama-style kind of tile, like in Kings of War. Baffled by the bizarre GW marketing, and by the super limited availability of the product on the shelves. But knowing that the setting is still alive, and I can read new stories set in it, gives me an amazing cozy vibe. And I'm always ready to grab new, grounded, low fantasy models. But, as said before on record, I'm not sure I'll be able to maintain this detached control when the Empire comes back. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. Remember that you can ask me anything down below with a comment, you can follow my projects during the week using one of my socials, or watch me painting live on Twitch. Check the schedule of the streams on the Twitch homepage. And if you want to support my work, check my Patreon page and join the community, or maybe ask for a commission. See you next week, guys!